She said she missed me while away on business, so I booked a flight to surprise her, only to catch her cheating with her coworker in the hotel bed. The alarm blared at 6 a.m., just like it did every other morning, signaling the start of another day. Jessica, my wife, and I slowly dragged ourselves out of bed, both clearly not ready to face the world yet. The morning sun streamed in through the curtains, and I let out a low groan as I swung my legs off the bed and planted my feet on the cold floor. "You sound like an old man," Jessica teased on her way to the bathroom. "After last night, I sure feel like one," I chuckled back, thinking about how wild and fun things had gotten. She always knew how to spice up a boring day. Today marked the beginning of Jessica's work trip, which meant I'd be holding down the fort alone for a full week. I wasn't exactly looking forward to it. As I listened to the water running from the shower, the idea of joining her crossed my mind, but I passed. My body still felt the aftershocks of last night, and I figured I could use a few more quiet minutes to recover. She came back into the bedroom full of energy, while I was still moving like I was underwater. "Up and at 'em, lazy bones. We've got bills to pay," she said with a grin, giving me a playful shove. All right, I'm moving," I muttered, finally making my way to the bathroom for a much-needed wake-up splash. Once we were both dressed and ready, we sat down for a quick breakfast together. After that, we went our separate ways, Jessica heading to the airport, and me off to work. We both worked for a manufacturing company based out of St. Louis. Jessica was one of the in-house lawyers, mostly handling negotiations, which meant she traveled often, like this current trip to Denver to iron out a deal with some aerospace firm. These trips popped up a few times a year and usually lasted about a week. Jessica's 35 now and graduated from State University's law school about 12 years ago. She stands around 5'4", weighs maybe 125 pounds, and has a figure that turns heads, about 34-24-35. From the moment I met her, I was completely hooked. I'm John Baker, 37 years old and an engineer at the same company. I'm 6 feet 1 inch, stay in shape, and Jessica and I both love playing golf, especially in local tournaments with friends. Our love story began at a company picnic, and from my side, it was love at first sight. Just 6 months later, we were hitched. Now 7 years into our marriage, we've finally bought the house we'd been dreaming of, hoping to start a family soon. Jessica plans to become a stay-at-home mom once we have kids, and her parents, who live nearby, are totally on board to help. She told me she's planning to stop taking her birth control pills after this trip. This morning, after breakfast, I helped her pack up the car. As we said our goodbyes, I kissed her and noticed her eyes were glistening. "Hopefully, we won't have to keep saying goodbye like this much longer," I said, feeling a strong pull toward the future we were building. "I can't wait for these trips to be over for good," she replied, clearly not a fan of these farewells. "I hate them too," I told her, trying to soothe us both. "How about we keep Friday night low-key, order some takeout and just relax?" "Sounds perfect. I'll see you then," she said before driving off. I stood there watching her car disappear down the street, then headed back inside to get myself ready for work. After picking up a coffee on the way in, I settled at my desk when my phone rang. "This is Baker," I answered. "Hey John, can you swing by my office?" It was Hubert, my boss. "Sure thing, be right there," I replied, grabbing my coffee and heading over. When I walked in, he motioned for me to take a seat. "John," he started, "an opportunity came up, and I thought of you especially since Jessica's out of town. Turns out, one of our technicians in California, Gerald Carter, was sick and couldn't get to a client in San Jose who was having problems with their equipment. Since I was pretty familiar with the setup, Hubert asked if I'd be willing to go handle it. I didn't have much keeping me in St. Louis this week, and with Jessica away, I figured why not? When would I need to be there? I asked. "Right away," he said. "Lucy will take care of your travel arrangements. Just call the client, let them know you're coming, and get a rundown of the problem." "Got it," I said, feeling a surge of excitement. "I'll head home, pack a bag, and catch a flight this afternoon so I can be at their site first thing tomorrow." "Perfect. Safe travels," Hubert said as our meeting wrapped up. I stopped by Lucy's desk to fill her in on the travel plans, then returned to mine and called the client to get the full story on the equipment issues. After that, I drove home to pack. On the way, a fun little idea popped into my head. If I wrapped things up early in San Jose, maybe I could swing by Denver and surprise Jessica. That thought alone had me grinning the whole way home. At the airport, I tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. I left a message saying I'd be at my parents' for a few days and told her to ring my cell in the evenings. By Tuesday afternoon, I had everything fixed at the client's site. The machines were humming along perfectly, and they were thrilled. Without wasting time, I booked a flight to Denver, aiming to land around 9 p.m. Mountain Time. I checked out of the San Jose hotel, grabbed dinner at the San Francisco airport, and boarded the flight. While eating, Jessica gave me a quick call. She asked how my folks were doing, and I went along with the little white lie, acting like I was really staying with them. She said the business talks were progressing but that she was worn out and planned to just rest in her hotel room for the night. We exchanged I love yous and hung up. Later that night, I landed in Denver and headed straight to Jessica's upscale hotel, arriving just before 10 p.m. The front desk confirmed who I was and handed me a key to her suite. I quietly let myself in. A small desk lamp was on, and her laptop was closed, but the place was oddly silent. I set my suitcase down and peeked into the bedroom and bathroom, both were empty. It was strange. I figured maybe she hadn't gotten back to the room yet. I debated whether to wait or check the lounge area to see if she was grabbing a drink. Then I noticed the connecting door to the next room was cracked open. Something didn't sit right with me, so I tiptoed over and nudged it open gently. The suite next door looked empty, at least at first glance. I stepped in quietly, curiosity getting the better of me. That's when I heard a noise from the bedroom that stopped me cold. A sick feeling hit my gut, and I broke out in a cold sweat. I slowly crept closer to the bedroom door, my heart pounding in my chest. When I peeked into the dim bedroom, it felt like the air got knocked right out of my lungs. Jessica was there, completely naked, lying tangled up with some man I didn't recognize. He was stretched out across the bed, his face turned away so I couldn't tell who he was. Every instinct in me wanted to storm in there, start shouting, and tear into the guy, but I held myself back. My whole body was shaking from a storm of emotions, but somehow I managed to stay in control. I backed away quietly and returned to Jessica's suite, trying not to fall apart. I'd packed a digital camera for the trip, mostly to snap some photos of the sights, but now it had a very different purpose. I adjusted the settings to work in low light and made sure the flash was off. Then I tiptoed back to the bedroom door like a ghost, and without making a sound, I raised the camera and started taking pictures. Neither of them noticed a thing, they were far too wrapped up in what they were doing. I stood there long enough to capture clear evidence of Jessica's betrayal, making sure the images would speak for themselves. Before I left, I noticed her briefcase sitting open on the desk. Inside was a business card with the name David Price, the lead negotiator at our company. That name wasn't new to me, but seeing it there now gave me a sickening suspicion. I pocketed the card and filed that thought away for later. Back in the room, I plugged my camera into her laptop using the cable I always bring. We used the same kind of software for handling photos, so it only took seconds to transfer the images. I picked the most damning one and set it as her desktop wallpaper. After packing up my camera, I slipped out of her room without a sound, swallowing the lump in my throat and trying hard not to cry. I walked to the elevator feeling like the world had just flipped upside down. When I reached the lobby, I returned the key to the front desk and stepped outside to call the airline. Luckily, there was an early flight back to St. Louis, 6:30 a.m., landing around 9:30. I realized that would line up perfectly with Jessica starting her day at the negotiation table and turning on her laptop. That would be the exact moment she realized she'd been caught. That would be the moment our marriage officially ended. I grabbed a room at a cheap motel near the airport. Sleep was impossible. All night, my mind kept replaying the images from that hotel suite. Around 5 a.m., after hours of crying and staring at the ceiling, I'd run out of tears. I left the motel drained but fully decided I was going to end our marriage without dragging it out. Once I landed in St. Louis and got into my car, my phone immediately started buzzing. Jessica was calling. I didn't pick up. Instead, I turned the phone off completely. When I pulled into our driveway, the house phone started ringing too. I checked the screen, it was Jessica again. I let it go to voicemail. Through the machine, I heard her voice. "John, you need to call me back. Please. It's really important." I didn't respond. Instead, I changed clothes and headed out to rent a U-Haul. Back home, I started packing as fast as I could, determined to get everything out before she returned around 4 p.m. I'd already rented a storage unit the day before, just in case. Within a few hours, I had cleared out all my belongings and dropped them off at the unit. Before I started packing, I'd also made an appointment with our lawyer to file for divorce. When I got to the lawyer's office, I asked them to file under irreconcilable differences instead of leading with the cheating, though I kept that as ammo in case things went sideways. I also told the lawyer to update my will. From now on, my brother was the only person who'd be getting anything from me. After that, I drove to the bank. I transferred half the money from our shared checking and savings accounts into new accounts that only had my name on them. Then I met with my investment advisor and did the same with our joint investment accounts. Feeling emotionally wrecked, I finally headed to my parents' house. I walked in with just a suitcase and a heavy heart. My mom looked shocked. "John, what's going on? Jessica's been calling here non-stop. Did you tell her you were staying here?" I sat down next to my dad, he's retired now, and told them everything. When I finished explaining what had happened, they just stared at me. They couldn't believe it. Jessica cheating? Our marriage over? I asked if I could stay with them for a while, at least until I figured out a new place and got some furniture. They said yes without hesitation. Turned out my timing was spot on. Around 6 p.m., just as we were about to sit down for dinner, someone rang the doorbell. My dad answered it and returned with Jessica trailing behind him, visibly shaken. "John," she started, her voice trembling, "why haven't you been answering my calls? I needed to talk to you. I went home and all your stuff was gone." "I figured the note I left on your computer would explain everything," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "I saw that note, but I was hoping it wasn't from you. Please, can we go somewhere and talk?" she pleaded. "Jessica," I said flatly, "you're not my honey anymore. There's nothing left to say. I've already started the divorce process. From now on, if anything needs to be said, it can go through our lawyers." She looked like I had just slapped her. "What you did in Denver completely destroyed every ounce of love I had left for you. So please, leave. I'd like to enjoy my dinner in peace." Tears filled her eyes. "Please, John, don't let it end like this. Can't we just talk about it first? What could you possibly say to excuse what you did?" I shot back. "It wasn't self-defense, that's for sure. And just so you know, I've got proof. I saw everything. If I were you, I'd give David, your little partner in crime, a heads up. I'm very interested to see what his wife thinks about all this." Her face turned pale. "Oh my God. John, please. Can't we just talk?" "Jessica, just go," I said firmly. "You're making my food go cold. But maybe you can write me a nice long letter explaining why you thought it was okay to wreck our marriage. I'm sure a smart lawyer like you can spin it to sound like it was all my fault. Maybe throw in how you still love and respect me while you're at it." Jessica stood frozen in the doorway, tears spilling over as she turned to leave. Before walking out, she paused and looked back one last time. "Please, John. Just think about this, don't throw everything away without a real conversation." "Goodbye, Jessica," I said, and this time I meant it. I said it clearly and without wavering. After Jessica left, tears streaming down her cheeks, my parents just sat there in stunned silence, still processing everything they just witnessed. "John, that was pretty harsh," my mom finally said, breaking the quiet. "Mom," I snapped a little, "do you want to see the pictures of her with another man?" That's the actual harsh part. That's what I walked into. The betrayal burned in my chest. She showed me zero respect, and I can't just brush that aside. I'll never be able to trust her again. "Do you really think I should start a family with someone who cheats like that?" My dad was quiet for a moment before finally speaking. "I get it, son, but once the dust settles, you might start to see things from a different angle." "I really doubt that, Dad," I said, my tone firm. "Can we just move on and finish dinner? I don't want to talk about this anymore." "All right, son," he replied softly, though I could tell he wasn't ready to let it go. Jessica's story, leaving home. That Monday morning, when I headed to the airport, I felt a strange mix of sadness and hope. Saying goodbye to John always stung, but I was also excited. This trip meant we were getting closer to starting a family. We'd both been waiting for the right moment, and it felt like everything was finally falling into place. The flight to Denver went smoothly, and I ended up seated next to David Price, our company's chief negotiator. We talked a little about work, but the conversation soon shifted to personal things, like our families and future plans. David already knew that I planned to quit once I got pregnant and focus on being a stay-at-home mom. He said he'd really miss working with me. David was 48, had been married for 2 decades, and had teenagers. We'd worked together long before I ever met John, and we had always functioned well as a team. Our colleagues sat a few rows behind us, distracted by their own conversations. When we checked into the hotel, we found out our rooms were side by side, a setup that made sense for working late, but for us, it meant something more. About 10 years ago, things between David and me shifted. Our late-night meetings became more than just business discussions. We convinced ourselves it didn't count as cheating, it made us better at our jobs, or so we told ourselves. Even after I got married, the habit lingered. Eventually, guilt caught up with me, and we stopped. But then, during one especially stressful negotiation, David brought it up again, suggested we blow off steam like old times. I hesitated but gave in. That rush, that secret danger, it somehow made things feel more exciting at home with John too, which only made me feel less guilty. It was twisted logic, but that's where my head was. The first night in Denver, I was too wiped out to meet up with David. But the next day was long and tense, and afterward, I caved again. What I didn't expect, what shook me to my core, was opening my laptop the next morning and seeing that photo. There it was. That exact moment. On my desktop background. David, sitting beside me, slammed the laptop shut immediately. His face went pale. "Where the hell did that come from?" he asked sharply, getting up from the table. "Come with me." We stepped into the hallway, and he turned to me, clearly rattled. Why is there a photo like that on your laptop? I have no idea, I stammered. That wasn't there the last time I used it. Let's look again, he said. We reopened it together. He stared at the image. Oh God. Jessica, that's you. What do you mean it's me? I asked, dazed. That can't be me, how would someone even? I don't know, but that's clearly you. And the guy under you. I think that's me. You can't see the face, but... My hands started to shake. But how could someone get that shot? My laptop's been with me this whole trip. It was only ever in my room or yours. The doors were closed, I assumed locked. You need to go back to the hotel. Ask the front desk if anyone accessed your room last night. I'll hold things down here. Try calling John, find out where he was last night. It couldn't have been him, I said, trying to convince myself. He told me he was at his parents' place. Did you talk to them on their landline? He asked. No. He told me to call his cell, I replied, realization slowly creeping in. Exactly. He could have been anywhere. Call me once you know something. I'll cover here. I will, I said, drenched in sweat. If John had been the one to plant that photo, then he had seen everything. And if that was the case, we were finished. I rushed to the hotel and asked the front desk if anyone had accessed my room the night before. The receptionist looked it up and replied, yes. A Mr. John Baker signed in and was issued a key at 9:45 p.m. He returned it 30 minutes later. The bottom dropped out of my world. That was when it really hit me, that our marriage might actually be over. The man I loved, the man I thought I had forever with, was gone. But I wasn't ready to give up just yet. I went straight to my room and tried calling John's cell. No answer. I left a voicemail, begging him to call me back. His secretary told me he was supposed to be on a business trip in California and would be back the next day. That lined up with what I knew, but it also meant he could have flown into Denver without anyone realizing it. Had he come just to surprise me, and ended up being the one surprised? I called his parents next. They said they hadn't seen him in days. I asked them to tell him to call me if they heard from him. I even called our house. No one picked up, so I left a message there too. I was alone. Alone and heartbroken. Tears wouldn't stop flowing as I sat in that empty hotel room, panicking and unsure what to do next. Desperate, I booked the first available flight back to St. Louis. I packed quickly and rang David to tell him what was happening. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, Jessica, it looks like we might both be facing divorces. Divorces? What do you mean? Our company has strict policies about managers dating subordinates. If this gets out, we could both lose our jobs. That hadn't even crossed my mind. Losing John already felt unbearable. Losing my job too? That'd be too much. I didn't even think about that, I admitted. Everything's falling apart. But right now, I just need to get back to St. Louis and talk to John. Maybe there's still a chance. I'll be here handling the rest of the negotiations, David said. Let me know what happens. Okay, I whispered. I hung up, grabbed my suitcase, checked out at the front desk, and took the hotel limo straight to the airport, hoping I could still salvage something from the wreckage. During the flight to St. Louis, I sat there in silence, praying that somehow I could get John to just hear me out. I wanted to explain that what happened between David and me was purely physical, it didn't come from a place of love or emotion. I told myself that if he could understand that, maybe, just maybe, he'd see it as a one-time mistake, a lapse in judgment rather than a complete betrayal of our life together. But when I walked into our bedroom and saw his closet completely empty, all of his things gone without a trace, the truth hit me hard. John knew. And he was done. I called him again and again, desperate to reach him, but he didn't answer. Eventually, I drove over to his parents' place hoping to get some answers. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could talk to him face to face. Seeing him there, sitting across the room from me like a stranger, broke something inside me. His expression was cold, unreadable, and distant. And when he looked me dead in the eye and told me he was filing for divorce, no discussion, no room for apologies, I felt sick. He said he didn't care what I had to say. That nothing would change his mind. And when he told me to write a letter explaining my side of the story, it felt like a cruel joke, like twisting the knife he'd already stuck in my back. I left their house in tears, barely making it to my car before I broke down completely. Everything we'd dreamed about, the family we wanted, the life we were building, growing old together, it was all crumbling. And in the middle of my heartbreak, I selfishly panicked about my age. What if I'd thrown away my only chance to have children? What if I was too old to start over by the time I found someone new? I eventually managed to pull myself together enough to drive back home, only it didn't feel like home anymore. It was just an empty space, echoing with loss. John's story, closure and consequences. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, All I could see was Jessica tangled up with David. I got up before sunrise, made a pot of coffee, and sat down with my laptop and camera. Something had been bugging me. I needed more proof that it was David in those pictures. As I flipped through the photos, I finally caught something. In one shot, the man, David, was reaching toward Jessica. And on his right arm, clear as day, was a tattoo. I zoomed in. A heart with J8 inside it, short for Janie 8, the name of David's wife. That was the confirmation I needed. I took a deep breath, then went upstairs, showered, and got dressed. My mom was already cooking breakfast by the time I came back down, but I was too focused to eat. At work, I got straight to it. I burned a few CDs with the images, printed out some high-resolution copies, including the one showing David's tattoo, and packed everything neatly into a folder. Then I walked over to HR to speak with Chad, our HR manager. We'd known each other for years, even played golf a couple of times. He raised an eyebrow when I laid out the pictures. "What's all this, John? Some kind of project?" I shook my head. "Unfortunately, no. That's my wife and David Price." The photos were taken Tuesday night in David's hotel room in Denver. They were there on a company trip. Chad's jaw tightened. "Damn, that's rough. So what are you thinking? You know this would violate company policy." "Yeah," I said calmly. "They broke the no dating clause in their contracts. I'm divorcing Jessica, and I want action taken at work too. If the company doesn't do anything, I'll have no choice but to sue." Chad nodded slowly. "All right. I'll bring this to legal. It won't be pretty, but we'll get started." After that, I stopped by my boss Huberts' office to let him know what was going on personally. He was surprised and clearly disturbed when I explained the situation. He granted me the rest of the week off without hesitation. Before I left, he thanked me again for the outstanding job I'd done in California and said the client was thrilled. He also floated the idea of me taking over the California region full-time since the current engineer there was retiring. I told him I'd think it over and let him know the following week. As I left Hubert's office, his secretary Lucy stopped me. "John, your wife came by earlier looking for you. Said she'd be back later." "Lucy, please tell her not to come back. I don't want to see her." Her eyes widened. "Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I didn't realize anything was going on." "There's a lot going on," I said, bluntly. "Jessica and David Price were having an affair. We're getting divorced." I figured by lunchtime, the whole office would know Lucy wasn't exactly known for keeping quiet. Back at my desk, I picked up the phone and called Janet Price, David's wife. We chatted a few times at company events. I wasn't sure how to tell her, but she deserved the truth. "Hi Janet, it's John Baker. How are you?" "I'm okay. David said you might call," she replied, confused. "But he didn't say why. Is now a good time to talk? I've got a hair appointment at 1, but I'm free now. You know where I live, right?" "Yes. I'll be there in 15 minutes. When I arrived at their home, I felt the weight of what I was about to do. But I couldn't let David walk away from this without facing the consequences, and Jessica sure wasn't going to bear it alone. Janet welcomed me in. "Coffee?" she asked. "Sure. Just black," I said. She handed me a mug and sat down across from me. "So, what's going on, John?" I was going to ease into it, I said quietly. "But I'll be straight with you, I saw David with Jessica in Denver. I have photos. I'm divorcing her. And they're both probably getting fired." Janet barely flinched. "I've had suspicions for a while now," she admitted. "I never wanted to believe it, but deep down, I think I always knew something was off." I nodded. "I'm sorry. I really am. I know how much this hurts. I wanted you to hear it from me, not the office gossip mill." "Thank you for telling me, John," she said, voice heavy. "I'm sad for both of us. David's not young, and finding another job at his level won't be easy. I brought a copy of the photos, if you want them." "Yes," she said, barely above a whisper. "Leave them here. I'll find the courage to look later." "I never thought my life would end up here," I admitted. "We were planning a family, but I can't build one with someone I don't trust or respect." "I understand," Janet said. "And I respect you for standing up for yourself. I wish it had been a one-time thing too, but I don't think it was. I think this has been going on for years. If there's anything I can do," I offered, "please let me know." She nodded, eyes misty but strong. "Thanks, John. You've done enough by being honest." Epilogue, 6 months later. It's been half a year since I filed for divorce. This morning, I got the final paperwork. It's official, Jessica and I are no longer married. We haven't spoken since the day she showed up at my parents' house. My lawyer handled every step. I gave up the house, even though it had a mountain of debt. I just wanted a clean break. I made sure my name was removed from the mortgage, so she was stuck with the bills. Without my income, she had to sell it and took a financial hit. At first, she tried to fight the divorce. But I gave her an ultimatum: sign within 48 hours, or I'd switch the grounds to infidelity and post the pictures publicly. She signed. Quickly. I guess that told me everything I needed to know about how much I really mattered to her. Jessica lost her job over the affair, but being the sharp attorney she is, she found another within a month. I've heard the new gig pays less, and the perks aren't the same. Apparently, she's already dating again. I can't help but wonder if the new guy knows how our marriage ended. Maybe I should tell him myself. David's wife divorced him too. He's struggling jobless for a bit, now working again, but his new salary barely covers alimony and child support. As for me, I've moved to Santa Maria, California. It's quiet, halfway between the Bay and LA. I've been here about 4 months, living in a modest apartment complex full of young couples and fellow divorcees. Most of them, like me, are trying to rebuild. The housing prices here are tough, so I'm saving up, not rushing anything. I've also met someone. A woman in my building who's gone through a divorce herself. We understand each other. No labels yet, but we're exploring the possibility of a future, taking things slowly. Trust matters more than ever now, especially with my job keeping me on the road so much. If we ever talk about kids, I want to make sure the foundation is solid this time. Time moves fast. And biological clocks don't stop ticking. So I'm thinking maybe it's time to move forward, for real.